The United States will aggressively revoke visas of Chinese students. That is the message, the warning, and the threat, really, now coming from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, announcing that the Department of State will be targeting those, quote, with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. This is expected to further rock the already shaky 90-day truce with China on tariffs with the Trump administration, and also further rock this blanket of uncertainty hanging over colleges and universities across the country, first and foremost when it comes to Harvard. For 15 years, China was the top source of international students studying in the United States. That is until India took the lead just last year. So let's get this. It could have a huge impact. CNN's Jennifer Hansler has much more on this. She's tracking this announcement. And Jen, what are you learning about what the Secretary of State is saying here?
Well, Kate, this surprise announcement from Secretary Rubio last night is a further escalation of tensions with Beijing and is also poised to be a further blow to higher education institutions here in the United States. Now, this announcement was pretty sparse on details. It says that they will aggressively revoke visas for Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. But the Secretary of State does not define what those critical fields are or how they are going to establish a connection to the CCP, given how ubiquitous it is in China. Will it just be that a family member is a member, that the student themselves is a member? Those questions remain unanswered. Now, there's also questions about how they are going to further revise their visa vetting process for those from China in Hong Kong. It is notable that the Secretary of State said they would be working with the Department of Homeland Security on the visa revocations, which indicates that they are going to be aggressive about potentially not allowing these students to remain in the United States once their visas are revoked. Now, this is just among a slew of actions that the administration has taken over the past several days, targeting visas, especially those for international students. On Tuesday, the State Department ordered all of its embassies and consulates around the world to pause all new visa appointments for student and exchange visa applicants. This pause is so they can work on an expanded social media vetting policy. They say that this policy guidance is going to be rolled out in the coming days, but it is likely to have an impact on the number of students who will be able to obtain those visas and come and study here in the United States. That in turn, of course, Kate, is going to impact the universities here who rely on these students for enrollment numbers and tuition money. I should also note that they escalated their feud with Harvard. I learned from senior administration officials last night that they are now reviewing the visas of all Harvard-affiliated visa holders, not just students, Kate.
That is an important new development as well. Thank you so much, and great reporting as always.
In another blow to international students in higher education across the U.S., the State Department says that it will work with the Department of Homeland Security to stop some Chinese students from attending school in the U.S. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced Wednesday that the administration will, quote, aggressively revoke visas for Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. Now, it's unclear exactly how many are affected, but according to a government report, more than 275,000 students from China studied in the United States in 2023 to 2024 in that academic year. Meantime, there is a new escalation in President Trump's feud with Harvard. Senior State Department officials telling CNN the agency is now reviewing all visa holders affiliated with Harvard, not just students. The officials did not say why the review was being conducted, though. On Wednesday, Trump suggested that the Ivy League school should have a 15% cap on the percentage of foreign students that it accepts.
We want to know where those students come. Are they troublemakers? What countries do they come? And we're not going to, if somebody is coming from a certain country and they're 100% fine, which I hope most of them are, but many of them won't be, you're going to see some very radical people. They're taking people from areas of the world that are very radicalized, and we don't want them making trouble in our country.
On Thursday, a federal judge in Boston will be hearing arguments on whether Harvard's international students should be indefinitely protected following Trump's attempt to revoke the university's student visa program.
We're being used like pawns in the game that we have no control of, and we're being caught in this crossfire between the White House and Harvard. And it feels incredibly dehumanizing.
Just heard from one of the many students there whose futures are effectively in limbo. Harvard has refused to give in to Trump's demands to make changes to its admission and curriculum. Administration officials in the Trump administration have repeatedly said that Harvard is being used as an example, and they say other universities may also face similar harsh actions as well. Nell Hegarty is a professor of management at the Tobin College of Business at St. John's University in New York. Professor, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me this evening.
I want to cover as much as we can here and start off with your thoughts on the Trump administration making yet another move on Wednesday night that could possibly further deter international students from looking to the U.S. to study and work. This time, obviously, according to the Secretary of State, revoking visas of Chinese students and doing so aggressively, as the Secretary put it. What do you make of this latest move from the White House?
Well, I think this is a temporary move. I think revoking these visas is not in the best interest of not only China, but also the United States. The Chinese, the richest of the Chinese send their students overseas to be educated, and the United States has always welcomed them, and I just don't see long-term how that's beneficial to either country.
And earlier this week, I did have a chance to interview an international student at Harvard, and he told me that the long-term consequences of sending a message and discouraging students with that message from coming to the U.S. to study and maybe even integrate their talents in the U.S. workforce, that those consequences could be far-reaching, especially industries like tech, science, AI, engineering, etc. In your view, Professor, where else could these potentially disillusioned students turn to, if not the U.S., and how much of a loss would it be for this country?
Well, first of all, it would be a great loss for this country because they've always added value to the country in terms of their presence in our universities, but also economically. If you look at states such as California, $3 billion influx of money into California. New York alone is a $2 billion financial pot for our country. So it's not good to not have these countries or have these students in our country. In terms of where else they could go, for many years now, countries such as Australia and the European countries have been vying for these students to go to their countries instead of the United States. But remember, these students have always wanted to rub shoulders with the best and brightest in their fields. And right now, that still remains the United States of America. So I still see them wanting to come here. And it's just a case of compliance, going through more paperwork to get here. But I do not see this as a major deterrent in students coming to the U.S.
Yeah, many of these amazing, talented young men and women have already proven their abilities. So this would certainly be just one more barrier for them, and no doubt that they could overcome that. Have you heard, Professor, of any universities already adjusting their admission strategies?
I think it's too soon to adjust admission strategies because all this is just happening now. Larger universities will use their international campuses that they have to onboard students before they bring them into the United States. Other universities will probably have students take courses online while this passes over, and then they will move to the United States. But I don't see the flow of students slowing down.
And I was going to ask, Professor, if I may ask, are you a former international student yourself?
Indeed, I was a former international student. I came from Ireland. I considered a number of universities in the United States. I came to New York. I actually came here to New York, to St. John's University in New York. Had a wonderful experience, embarked upon a career in industry here, ultimately ended up getting married, having a child, and contributing to society here. So these international students do contribute to society here, but moreover, when they go back to their home countries, to serve as wonderful ambassadors for the United States when they go home.
Because of your personal experience, what you say certainly carries a lot of weight. So finally, perhaps a message that you would have to a young student in Asia, Europe, Latin America, anywhere in the world who has their sights set on studying in the U.S. but may feel discouraged given what we're experiencing right now in the U.S., given that political climate. What would you tell them?
I would say there's always been red tape, there's always been paperwork. Do not be deterred. This too shall pass. It's just a matter of compliance. and just an extra layer of compliance the students have to get through. Once this vetting process is complete, I think students will have no problem coming in here to the United States.
Professor Hagerty, thank you so much for your insight and certainly your encouraging words. Clearly a success story. Professor, we appreciate you.